What's up, people? Come on in. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants to have this debate. Then let us have it. Because there's been an awful lot of conversation surrounding this for a long time. This is not something that's new. So I want to go ahead with my loud ass smoke detector that's going to be going off. Can't wait till I move. But anyway, peace, Tasha. We're going to go ahead and get into this and pick up from Tasha's chat, basically, from her comments, well, basically from the chat. And we want to know what's going on with this indigenous classification. Am I a Moor? Do I have to be indigenous to be a Moor? Or can I just be indigenous? Do I have to use that term? And if I have to use that term, is there anything that's proving or any evidence that proves that I must use that term? These are things that we're going to have a quick little conversation on, but I only did it live so that the same group of people can jump in and we can go in on it, because I think it's interesting that most people want to lump people together like sovereign citizens. Moors are, in my opinion, unjustly lumped with sovereign citizens. So I don't think that Moors and sovereign citizens are anywhere near the same thing. And most people won't agree with that are not in the know. Now, I'm in the know, and I know that that's not true. Yeah, labels makes it easier for you to put people in boxes. It really does. That's why I asked the question, can I just be indigenous? You know what I'm saying? Like, what paperwork can be created that I don't create or have a hand in creating? You see what I'm saying? Like, if I don't have a hand in creating the paperwork that's going to get me, classify me as what I want to be classified as, that's a problem. That's a problem, because that means other people are classifying me as something that I might not want to be classified as. So somebody send a link to, not a link, but I thought I posted it in a group so that BC could come on in and she could come in and give her take, and Root too. Because I'd rather them come in and we can continue, because they want to talk about it. So we might as well talk about it. I'm not going to bed right now. So we might as well have the discussion and talk about the shit and get it out there and get it over with. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to keep coming up. Okay, the birth certificate shit, that as well. That is something that is never been proven as far as I'm concerned. I've heard a lot of good information on it. I've heard a lot of, let's use the word convincing. I've heard a lot of information about the birth certificate that is very convincing, but still it's not proof positive of anything. So whatever the case may be, whatever's going on, these people set it up where they can plausibly deny all of this shit. The way that this shit is set up so that they could deny everything. They could say that, nah, we don't know what you're talking about. If you ask the average lawyer about your indigenous status and this, that, and the third, most of them are going to tell you they have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And that's just straight up and down. That's not me wanting it to be that way or anything, because that's not what I want. But yeah, all the info on the paperwork, then who the paperwork goes to, this, that, and the third. Like, even if we're going to give that a pass. Even if we give it a pass and say, you know what, the people that they send in the paperwork to are going to do the right thing with the paperwork, okay? Even if we say that's true, even if that's the case. Even still, man, you're not explaining to me how I could be something, and the only way it's recognized is by some sort of paperwork that I didn't have a hand in creating. I didn't have a hand in creating this paperwork that identifies me. Another problem I have is when people come up identifying me. Because if we're going to change our classification, our status, we got to realize that one of the main things, one of the number one things that we argue against is being classified, or is people labeling us such or whatever the fuck. If somebody's labeling us something, that's okay, we'll have a problem with that. That's what we fighting against. Then we have another group of people who come up and start labeling you as shit. I don't know. I gravitate to more science because there's too much overwhelming information that shows that there's something there. That these people aren't just pulling this shit out of their ass. These people aren't just making up more science and saying like this. There's something to it. There's too much information. There's something to it. At the same time, with there being something to it, it still begs, the question still gets asked, the proof, the evidence, the factual basis that you're going off of to say that I must call myself a Moor, and if I don't call myself a Moor, then I am not going to be free. I heard one of the brothers that I respect immensely. I respect this brother immensely. Asir the Duke of Tears. Asir the Duke of Tears said, when the shit hits the fan and these people start coming around gathering up niggas and doing this and the third, and when he raises his red flag, that they're going to pass right over his house, and that his diplomatic status only covers 50 people. So therefore, whoever those 50 people are, they must either be with him when this is going on, or at least have some sort of paperwork from him. You know what I'm saying? Appreciate it. And they must have some sort of paperwork from him to be able to not get snatched up by these people. Now, I guess he means Europeans. Okay? I guess he means Europeans. I'm going to assume that's what he's talking about, Europeans. See, I didn't know. See, that's what I'm saying, Tasha. It's so many different things. Like, I don't know whether a diplomatic status has a fucking limit or not. You know what I'm saying? This is just what I've heard said. I don't know that for sure. I'll trust that the brother has actually done the research, but at the same time, I don't know that for sure. And it goes back into what I said before. These are the different sides of more science. There's so many different sides. There's so many different ways to come from it. Like, I gravitate more to Taj Tariq Bey side because Taj Tariq Bey doesn't fucking talk about paperwork like that. He talks about it, but he doesn't talk about it like you hear other Moors worship paperwork. Like, paperwork is God to them. Did you file your such and such? Did you do like that's like it's like God to them. Speaking of that FBI thing, you know what is crazy? You know what else is crazy about that FBI thing? The FBI just got a new group, okay, that they made up out of thin air, and this group is called the Black Identity Extremists. Okay, that's what you're talking about. The Black peace. Welcome. We were waiting for you. We looking for Root now. We waiting for him to jump in here. But right now we're talking about this IDK, this identity, Black Identity whatever they're talking about, bullshit that they're talking about. So basically, if you identify as extremists, right? If you identify as being black, that, like, where does the extreme part come? No one even knows where the extreme part's coming from. It's just something that they threw in there. So being on the FBI watch list is really nothing to really fart at anymore. It's kind of like boots on the ground again and that shit now, because it's everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Everyone says that shit. That everyone's on a watch list. Anyone who doesn't say things that they like is on a watch list, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm the watch list thing. I hear it, and I'm glad that people bring it up, because I want people who don't know about it to understand the way this government operates. And I want people to just be aware, but I don't want to pay too much attention with it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to pay too much attention to it, because I'm sure all of us are up there who talk and who speak freely about life in America. Anyone who talks and or speaks freely about life in America can be deemed an extremist of some sort by the American government, because there's nobody around that's prepared to check the government on the things that they say and the positions that they take against people who they shouldn't be taking those positions against. But tonight we're going to talk about indigenous. Who's indigenous? What does it mean to be indigenous? What is the significance of not filing paperwork versus filing paperwork but still holding the same position? Now that's the question I'm asking. What's the significance of filing paperwork? What's the importance of filing paperwork versus me not filing paperwork but still living and maintaining the same lifestyle, maintaining the position that I'm indigenous? My whole house is shredded with indigenous. My whole conversation is indigenous. You know, like it, and so it's like I don't want to concern myself with everything else the government says, because if we get into that, then are we really being us? Or are we just letting them run us and rule us and let them tell us what the fuck we should and shouldn't be? But I specifically I'm giving this challenge out to the Moors. Like, I feel that I'm indigenous, and I also feel that there is a lot of Moorish history in this country, in this hemisphere. So I don't understand why I must claim Moorish science. That's what I want to know. I can't say indigenous without saying Moorish science? Or can I? Can I take that position? Can I take the position of being free and just a free man, Tasha, just a free man on the fucking planet, on God's planet, on the Creator's planet, whatever we want to say, God, the Creator, whoever, Most High, blah, 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 blah. Can I just say I'm a free creation on this planet under the Creator? I'm not saying black, because I'm working on a shirt right now that I'm going to post in the group, and you guys are going to see it. And we're going to have a debate on that here on Shame TV East Watch, and that's up and coming. We want to have a debate on black and nigger. When people get mad about someone saying nigger, when nigger really is the same thing as saying black. So why would you be mad about calling yourself a nigger when you happily call yourself black? But we're going to read this comment. The Moors are a religious 501c under the United States Corporation. They are not recognized as an indigenous tribe or a nation. Okay, Black conscious, where did you attain this from? We want to know where you got, not saying that we're questioning, well, we are questioning it. You know what I'm saying? We just want to know where do you derive this from? That stance and that information from. And the police don't give a fuck about Amor. That's what I be trying to tell these niggas, that whether you fly a flag or not, nigga, these fucking cops don't care about you flying no flag, nigga, because they don't even know about this shit. They don't know that you indigenous. The average fucking white boy cop who just graduated high school 4 years ago, he don't know shit about you being indigenous or what your flag mean or none of that shit. Okay, so we're going to start here. According to Black Conscious Fraud Committee, she says the United Nations Indigenous Protection Act of 2012 says that Moors, or what we come to know as the Moors, are a religious group under 501c, and they are not recognized as indigenous, as an indigenous tribe or nation. Now that's very interesting. That's very, very interesting, because I want to know what Moors have to combat that. Because you hear Moors, their major stance is that being a Moor and claiming your indigenous status go hand in hand, meaning Moor and indigenous are the same thing. It's the same as being a tribe or whatever, whatever. Am I wrong in saying that? Okay, Doran Shakor says that black does not mean the N-word. Now, I'm not the creator of dictionaries. I always say that shit. I just read them shits. I'm not the creator of etymology dictionaries. I just read them. And the term nigger was derived, or a funny way of saying Negro or Negro. Okay? Now, I'm not the author of this, and I am not the sole authority. All I'm saying is, through my research, the term nigger is a slang and or funny or a different way of saying the term negro, which simply means black. So if anybody else got any, I've heard the different ones about Naga and the kings and the Naga kings and blah, 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 blah. But right, I've heard all of that stuff before. I've heard everything about that before. That's why I'm telling you guys, when it comes to information, I've heard the shit. I've been 16, 17 years at this when I started really studying hard. So I've heard all the different stories. And the only one that has any sort of basis behind it is negro, which Europeans corrupted the term negro, which simply meant black, and started calling the people that they call black, even right now, that term. They just call them niggers. That's it. But I want to kind of stay on point. What you say, Black Conscious? Where the hell is Root at? Okay, Black Conscious is still on her stance that Moors are not recognized as an indigenous tribe. And I'm going to look that up myself. When I get off, I'm going to look it up myself. And that, okay, Black Conscious, there we go. You're fine, because I don't want to lead this conversation You know what I mean? I don't want to lead this conversation. I kind of want to let it happen. And what you just said right here, we were here before the Moors came in 1492. Okay, here we go. That is also a story that I heard. I also heard that story before, that there was whole different tribes of black people over here, some named, some unnamed. Okay, some named and some unnamed, but we were here long before people were documenting people being here. So if that's the case, if the Moors are so hell-bent on, this is what I have against the Moors. They're so hell-bent on calling every fucking black person a Moor. And they're not telling me the origin of that term. They're not telling me, when did black people get together and say, yo, we all Moors? All of us. Even the black people who are inhabiting the lands of what we call California now, who weren't even on anybody's radar. Black Conscious says, we told the Moors not to bring other people, and they did anyway. So that means the Moors was a specific group of black people, just like all different tribes and groups of black people, maybe back then. Charles, you said the name was later applied to Arabs. I heard that before. See, and that's another one, that even the term Moor was a term that was that they called us. Like, it wasn't that we were running around calling ourselves that. So if you're talking about being indigenous, that covers everyone who is indigenous. That means you have to cover and know about tribes that I've never even heard of. So you could make up names at this point, and I wouldn't know any better or know any different. I'm just saying that there had to be groups, mad different groups of black people all over this hemisphere. I'm talking about in what we call Canada now, all over this fucking place. They would have to have agreed to be called Moors. And when did that happen? When did they agree that certain paperwork would give them status? Because right now, when it comes to this, like I said, I only listen to 2 Moors, mainly, sometimes 3. Well, I could add Root in there, you know what I'm saying? Because that brother, he works hard at trying to gain knowledge to spread to the people. So I'm going to put him in there too. But Taj Tariq Bey, and I see the Duke of Tears, and sometimes Sabir Bey. But the questions I have for them is the same points that you raised, Black Conscious. Is like, nobody agreed to this shit. So how you're doing the same thing that the United States government does. They take their laws that somebody sits in an office and thinks up, writes it down on a piece of paper, and then magically it applies to everyone. Though it doesn't magically apply to everyone, it applies to everyone through force of law, meaning force. They're forcing this shit to apply to you. It's a or else type of deal. So in an or else type of deal, how can I accept that as something that I should claim? Because if I should claim it, it should be something I'm doing. And when we're dealing with this more science shit, there's nothing that we're doing. It's something that a bunch of people are telling us that our ancestors did. Some of our ancestors did, but they're conflating it and making it appear it was all of our ancestors. And I just don't buy that. I just do not buy that. Right. Did they have Bay and L and All and Ali on their name back then? Thank you. Great point. Were they all called Bays and L's and all that? Were these niggas running around in the woods making teepees and eating buffalo and shit, calling themselves Buffalo L? Like these questions are questions that I have, because it's like if the Moors was getting ran out of England and ran out of parts of Africa and ended up coming over here. Now I do think that the Moors, were constantly coming over to this hemisphere. I think that it's true that the Moors knew all about what we call the Americas now. I think that they knew that. I think that the Moors were allowed to come back and forth here because they was basically black just like us. But I do not think everybody running around here was calling themselves no goddamn Moor. Right. I look at it like Taj Tariq Bey said. Do you know right now, guys, that Taj Tariq Bey catches a lot of flack? If you hear Moors talk about him, you'll hear Buffalo. You'll hear these Moors talking about this nigga in a certain light. I'm gonna show you. This is how they do. They'll talk about him while not using his name. They'll say, Moors out here. If you're not a temple Moor, you ain't no Moor. Now, I've heard more than one Moor say that. If you ain't a temple Moor, then you really not a Moor. So how the fuck can Moorish be something that's indigenous? Something that is basically, I'm connected to a group of people who lived on this hemisphere for thousands of years. But I can't call myself connected to them people if I ain't a part of your temple. Let's dive deeper on that notion right there. I can be what I am, but I can't be what I am unless I fill out paperwork for a temple that's registered supposedly by certain people for my benefit. Now, I don't know who actually started the Moorish Science Temple, because people say Drew Ali, but I read that it was another brother who had did that shit like 50 fucking years before him, or 40 years or something before Drew Ali. I just can't remember his name. So who really started this talk about Moor equaling indigenous? Yes, 501c is a religious organization, and there's Moors out here who will use the term religious. It's a couple of them down south, I think in either Tennessee or Georgia or something like that, when they use the term religious, because I had an article on this shit. My mother sent me an article in like 2010 about these Moors in Norfolk, Virginia, and how the term terrorist started applying to them, but they weren't calling them terrorists in the sense of blowing up a school bus terrorist. They were calling them terrorists in the sense of paper terrorists. But that's when the labeling really started picking up, when they started labeling Moors or anyone who was calling themselves a Moor. And the court started taking a position of ignoring their paperwork because they was calling them paper terrorists. That's what they were calling them. So this whole notion of terming Moors and calling them certain things is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time, because there's been a lot of people going in court with this paperwork, going in court with this Moorish science paperwork and shit. Okay? And nobody absolutely nobody is showing these people walking in and doing what they say they do. There's no videos out here showing any dark-skinned, copper-complected people who are called African Americans by Americans, black people who identify, call themselves Moors or anything of the like. There's no videos anywhere out here on YouTube or anywhere else that we can look to find these people going into court with this paperwork and being successful with this paperwork. Hakeem Bey, I'm aware of that video on Black Conscious. Hakeem Bey, he did that a long time ago about the wars starting the New World Order, and that Europeans basically took that shit over when the fall of humanity, meaning the fall of black people, was at hand. And we got together and started. It's not that, from what I hear, Black Conscious, it's not that we actually taught the Europeans the New World Order, though that's correct. That statement can be deemed correct. We taught them that. We taught them that not just to teach them that, but because we were falling. Humanity, meaning men, were falling. The real men, the real humans, us, black people, were going into a sleep. And so for things to stay known and to stay basically saying, we would have forgotten everything if we didn't teach it to the European. If we didn't teach them certain things, all of our knowledge and histories and things of that nature about ourselves would have been wiped away from our memory. So they were teaching it to the European to keep those things alive so that the time for us to awaken again, we could come back into the fold of who we are, blah, 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 blah. So I've heard that story. Well, that's the way I've heard that story told in a little bit I read. So the question is, does more equal indigenous? That is the question. Does more, just the term Moors, more, does that equal indigenous? And if it does, who has any sort of proof, evidence, or anything of the like to corroborate that position? Is there anybody out there who can do that? Because I'd like to hear it. Because I think at this point, I don't think there's anything new that I can hear in regards to more science or being indigenous. That's what I think. And you know, Black Conscious, I think that just goes to, I think that it's passed down as, oh, we were trying to breed them out. I think in actuality, them niggas was just over there taking them white girls and having sex with them. You know what I'm saying? So literally, if there is a treaty that exists, because I have the shit, I have the fucking treaty in my book, in my probably in that folder over there under my papers. I have the treaty, the North American such and such treaty. I had that shit. I have it. I copied it word from word from the treaty. I sat down and it took me like, what, 6 sheets of paper, and I copied the entire thing. Word for fucking word. So I have the treaty. But the point is, who's enforcing this treaty? Does it have to be 1,000 of us for this treaty to be enforced? Does it have to be 1 million? Does it have to be 10 people? Can Moors be spread out? Do we all have to be in the same place? Do we? I guess the treaty with Spain would end if you were expelled out of the country. There's no way in hell anyone should be saying that we hold a treaty with somebody and they expelled you out of the country and then held the Inquisition where you went, helped travel to where you were, and then held the Inquisition. So I don't see how a treaty could be in place there. That's what I'm saying, yo. Like, we've been here so long, man. There's no way in hell, dog, that we went under the name or title Moor. There's no way, man. Now, I done heard too many people trying to make sense of that, and I still don't agree with it. And those people I respect and generally agree with, but I don't agree with that shit. I don't agree with no fucking we was here all this time and calling ourselves Moors. And we just, no, dog, there's no way, man. There's no way, because my great-grandmother was a Cherokee Indian, a little lady with long, pretty hair, and she was black. She just had long, straight hair, and she used to tell us that she was an Indian, and that she used to say the term Indian. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, "How we from here, and we from her, and we from here, and I ain't no African." And she was like, "How her father, which is my great-grandfather, because I'm talking about my great-grandmother, so I would be talking about my great-great-grandfather, you know what I'm saying? His name was King Isaac Seymour, and she's the Seymours, and she's a Seymour, you know what I'm saying? Which is directly goes to the Cherokee tribe of North Carolina is in all over here. You know what I'm saying? So how can I ignore her history? How can I ignore that part of my family, which is my ancestry? I can't ignore it. And through all the conversations about who she was and all of that shit, I ain't never heard the term Moor brought up. Now, again, does that mean that Moorish science doesn't exist? Does that mean that there wasn't black people called Moors and that they did X, Y, Z? No, that does not mean that. All I know is indigenous people over here were not calling themselves Moors. And what we actually called ourselves is probably lost forever. It's probably lost forever. No one knows for sure. No one knows for sure. Darkman X says Moor, Black, Negro are all Indo-European terms, all meaning African. Like I said before, that's why I said, why do people get mad and say, don't be calling me I don't use the term nigga, but you use the term black. It's the same shit. It's the same shit. It's the same thing. If you're going to get mad at me using the word nigga, you should be just as mad as me using the word black, calling you black. So I don't like that shit it's the same fucking thing, man. I don't think that anyone knows the true names of these tribes that was over here. I don't know if anybody knows the true history behind tribes that was wiped out. Peace, peace, peace. Thanks for stopping through. But yeah, I don't know anybody who knows the true history and the names of all the tribes that existed and were wiped out when they were fighting. Nobody knows that shit. Nobody knows that shit. That's why you don't hear anybody mentioning it. But they will say more. And I don't want Moors to think that I'm attacking you because I keep saying, yo, my title is Bay. I've had a Bay title. Dear God, I've had a Bay title since 2009. Since 2009, I had a Bey title to my name. Son Assad Prince Derek Bey. I've had that title to my name since 2009, 2010. So it's not that I don't fuck with Moors or none of that shit. It's the point that they got to realize there's flaws in your rhetoric. And I agree with you 1000%, Black Consciousness. That's why I just said what I said, that there are flaws in their rhetoric, because I'm going to repeat her quote, most Moors are just indoctrinated. And you can tell that you're indoctrinated because there's no originality coming from you. When you talk, it all sounds like you're repeating a standard Moor talking point. The only time that I see differences in the Moors is when we start getting on paperwork and success in court. When you start going on that level, then you start seeing all these divisions. But just talking to someone who calls themselves a Moor, or they're with the Moor Science Temple, or whatever the case may be, they're pro-Moor. Every time they talk, it sounds like standard Moorish talking points. It sounds like when you go to school, anyone who goes to an American school, I don't care if it's private or whatever, you're going to learn certain things that everyone learns in all those schools. So you're going to, because they try to create like-mindedness. That's why they teach you government. We're all citizens. You know what I'm saying? They'll even have classes now about citizenship and all this shit like that. That's called indoctrination. So that when you hear different people talk from different places, different walks of life, they're echoing the same talking point. Black Conscious Fry said they're under the United States corporation, so the paperwork signs you up as a corporate slave all over again, basically. Because I keep saying, man, my only thing with the paperwork thing is once I do, me neither. I've never seen a Moor win in court with paperwork because they don't show it. And they're not going, you're not going to tell me that you can go in there and take the court because you control the court, because this is your blah, 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 but you can't bring a video camera in there and record that shit. I don't like that. I don't like that, because there's people who don't claim Moorish science and they always try to fight against the court system, and they're always challenging the court's authority and jurisdiction and things of that nature, and they're bringing cameras in. And they're not always claiming that they own the fucking court either. Well, the Moors, as far as I'm concerned, Black Conscious, the Moors were colonizing a lot of people because they colonized the Europeans. They colonized the Europeans. If people watch that movie, it's on Stars, I think, on cable. If you got cable, it's either Stars or Cinemax. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is showing up there right now with Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman. Yeah, that it's up there now, and you should check it out. You know, like if you just look at the way Morgan Freeman interacts with Kevin Costner. If you look at the way that he interacts with Kevin Costner, he is treating Kevin Costner like a student. He is treating him like a child that he's raising. Even the white people, the Europeans that he came across in the movie, when they went in the little tavern and all that shit like that, like it's like he's constantly, he was the authority throughout the entire movie. He was the authority in the room. He was guiding Kevin Costner, telling him what to do, what not to do to be successful. So there's a lot to this, man. that no one's talking about. There's a lot to this that people are not really getting on board with and really dissecting that we should dissect. What is the Moors' true relationship? Who exactly were the group of black people that were Moors? Stop trying to make the whole world Moor. Like I said, there's no black person, or what we call ourselves as black people, wasn't running around calling themselves Moors 1,400 years ago, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, 7,000 years. Let's go 17,000 years ago. Niggas was saying Moor. Niggas was calling themselves, I'm a Moorish kingdom, sultan. 17 to 20,000 years ago, somebody was calling themselves a motherfucking sultan. Black conscious, I've heard that story as well. I'll tell you the version that I heard. I heard now, because she says that the Moors are like slave catchers. Well, I heard that they were not just like slave catchers, that they actually were the ones who dealt directly with the slaves, which were Europeans. They were the ones who dealt directly with the Europeans, which were the slave population of Earth. So they were the ones who trained the first Europeans in war and battle and things of that nature, because they were training them to go in there and do their job. Meaning they were the ones in there supposed to be controlling the white creature, so to speak, and they began training other white creatures. Namely, from the way I heard it, that's where you get the Jews from. The Khazarians, the Khazarian kingdom is supposedly the oldest kingdom in Europe, in white land. Is supposedly the oldest white kingdom, white-based, European-based kingdom. Okay, and that the kingdom of Khazaria really wasn't. It was a kingdom, but it was completely under Moorish rule. You see what I'm saying? That the Moors basically created that kingdom and then allowed these people that were loyal to them, that they then trained in sword play. They then trained in using, yes, I dare say, firearms. Okay? They didn't look like they look today, but the Moors had firearms. And they trained these individuals to pretty much do their job. Hey, look, go control these fucking unruly ass white people, and we'll make you special white people. Handlers, exactly. We'll make you special white people, and we'll even let you have your own little kingdom, and you get to call yourself by the titles that we call ourselves. So I've heard that story as well. I heard that story that the Moors trained the Khazarians, which is the oldest white kingdom of Khazaria, the Khazarian kingdom or whatever, they were basically warlords for the Moors. And you see why I say that the Moors need a singular voice. They need a singular fucking position, because there's too many different sides to this shit. There's too many different sides. Okay, Black Conscious, see, that's where I differ. Okay, I'm gonna go in on her next comment. Because her and Root was the reason why I did this live stream, basically. Okay, I'm gonna read your comment. We would not be in this situation if it were not for the Moors. Now, here's where I disagree with that. We do not know that. We do not know how many other niggas had their hands in it, but are not getting blamed. We still ignore these African kings by letting Europeans in and come in, because there was a slave trade. It just wasn't the way that these motherfuckers try to tell me it was. I'll never believe that, because that's just too crazy. There's no way in hell, just security risks alone, there's no way in hell that could have taken place the way they say it took place. But And you don't even have any ships, any remnants of anything from that shit. But anyway, yeah, that's all I'm saying. It's like, I don't blame just the Moors. And that's something that's going around when people be saying, you know, the Moors this, the Moors that. Like, dog, again, I don't know. I knew who my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather were. I do not know who King Isaac Seymour, who is my great-great-grandfather. I do not know who his great-great-grandfather's grandfather's great-grandfather was. So therefore, I could sit there and be talking about the Moors did this and the Moors did that, and my grandfather, my great-grandfather's great-grandfather's great-great-grandfather was a fucking Moor, or classified, or would be termed as a Moor. So we don't know that. We don't know that. I think, and then that's excuse, you know what I mean? That's like excusing all the other niggas for all the other fuckery that they had in the hands that they had in the downfall of our people, who probably were fighting against the downfall of our people. So I look at it wholly as a people thing. Yeah, we was, because when the Moors, it's like we were on our level. That's the reason the Moors was running around colonizing England, because they was basically expelled from wherever the fuck they was at. Then if you listen to the Hebrew Israelites, they'll tell you, if you listen to their story, the Hebrews was exiled and sent in a slave trade and sent across the Americas and all. But like, it's so many different stories. But I kind of gravitate to the fact that Black people have been going in a decline as far as our civilizations go, because we've been here so long, and that the infighting was inevitable. So the Moors kind of get a dirty rap, and like, here's where I'm coming from, guys. I don't bash the Moors, because I'm like, nigga, for everybody who bash a Moor, if you check your lineage long enough, you're probably a Moor, or you are probably descended from a person who was classified as a Moor, or whatever the case may be. But what I also say about the Moors is, you're not going to go around and tell me that I'm a Moor and that I need to do this, that, and the third, or if I do not do these things, then I'm just stuck and I'm Black and I'm a Negro, and I'm like, see, you're losing me there, because you got paperwork, you got all this shit popping, and I still don't see no Moorish police department anywhere. I don't see no Moorish House of Representatives. I don't see no Moorish House of Congress. I mean, no Moorish Congress anywhere in this country. I don't even see no Moorish fucking news outlet. I don't see a Moorish paper. I don't see a fucking Moorish newspaper floating around the country. I keep hearing things. I'm going to share another thing that I've heard. I do keep hearing things like, oh, Johnny Cochran was fighting for the Moors and this, that, and the third, and to get reparations and this, that, and the third, and that's why he killed him. That's why he got killed. Okay, that makes sense to a degree, but the Moors don't agree with reparations or Moorish courts. And that's the, thank you very much, Onyx Palms, or Moorish fucking courts. And I think that that is the number one thing that we should have seen a long time ago, is a fucking Moorish court. Because that's the whole basis of what you do. That's the whole basis of, okay, guys, when we talk about Moors, where was most of us introduced to a Moor in Moorish science at? Was it just random history that we were introduced, studying history, that we were introduced to Moors? Or did it start with this whole court stuff and this, that, and the third, and paperwork and all that shit? Because that's where we were introduced to this Moorish science stuff. Thank you, Black Conscious. Tribes have all that Court, police, government, etc. Exactly. That's why I keep saying, do all the Moors have to come in one place to really be Moors? Can we be, if I'm a diplomat, can I be anywhere I want to be on this hemisphere? But even if I am, shouldn't in each state there be a Moorish government, a Moorish court, something? Because at this point, there's absolutely nothing. The most important things that we need to see that are Moorish is a fucking court and a fucking police department. Or security department, because you don't have to call it police. So I don't think that being a Moor and then telling everyone else that they need to be that, yet you're not showing me anything. Now, another thing, now, and I'm not talking about me personally, for all the Moors who see this, I get it. Okay? A lot of us get it. But what we're saying is, when you're coming at people and you're talking to them about this, you're coming at them and you're telling them what they are. So that's the same thing that the government that you're warning them against is doing. So you're coming to me doing the same thing that you're warning me about. You can't come to me and warn me about getting food on my clothes, and then come to me and put food on my clothes, spill food on my clothes. Okay, so that's number one, that thing that the Moors do. They come and label you whilst telling you don't let people label you. Okay, that's a contradiction, and that leads to trouble. Then all the things that the Moors should have, or at least the two things they should have, they have neither one. They have no structure. I don't care how many temples. And here's the thing that I don't want any more to do anymore. Don't keep telling me about your temple. Because that sounds, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that shit, I'd be a millionaire. If I had a nickel for every time I heard a Moor say, once presented with a situation about Moors not being successful in court, Moors not having certain structure in place for the people, Moors not having this, that, and the third, they'll always respond, not my temple. So if it ain't everybody's temple, then the shit should be popping like you claim it does. Thank you, Black Conscious. That's what I mean. Why do I have to create an indigenous system when if I'm indigenous, I can just be that? But for the people who just come in, when we started this stream, some of the things that we uncovered were that the Moors were not as they claim, meaning the Moors are not a tribe, and the Moors are not an indigenous group. And that is not because I want to say that, but that is information that was passed on to us by Black Conscious Fraud Committee that allegedly, and I'm going to take her word for it for right now, but I'm still going to say allegedly, as far as the show goes, comes from the United Nations Indigenous Protection Act of 2012. So according to the United Nations Indigenous Protection Act of 2012, Moor, or being a Moor, or Moorish temple, or Moorish science, or Moorish Moor is not a group. It is not a nation, and it is not an indigenous group. It is, in fact, a religious group. And we all know that religious groups, though they may not pay taxes, they are still classified under the corporation. So they are still classified as being a part of the corporation, especially if they have the 501c3 or C or religious background, religious bullshit, exemption, all that shit. Because there would be no need for any more to have a 501c. There would be no need for you to have that if you have your own nation. Am I going too far right there? Am I off basis? Because I don't think that I am. I don't think that I would have to register the same way an American-born citizen pastor registers. Why should you be doing the same thing he's doing? He's clearly still under the United States corporation, and you clearly are not. So why are you doing the same things that he's doing? You should not be doing what he's doing. But I want to drive this point here home before we continue on. I want to drive this point home. I went at Umar Johnson about his degrees because he won't just show them. And that would clear up everything. And that kitten would be put to bed, and that would be the end of that. I'm coming at Moors on the same tip. Because if you got all this power, and there's so much power in being what you say we should be, how come I don't ever see you displaying this power? You don't have to be arrogant with it. You ain't got to be boastful. But you still can provide some sort of facts, evidence, and or witness to what you're doing. Meaning a video camera. In court, a list. Creating a list. Creating a database of all the people who went to court using Moorish science paperwork and the results of such. That's it. That's all we want. We want to have a database created where we can find out which and or what Moorish science temple is providing the most accurate help, the most pertinent help that's going to actually get your ass out of something. That's what we want to see. Now we have this term going around. What is it? Dirty Moors. Moors are more. I'll leave that alone. I'll leave the dirty Moor one alone because I'll leave that alone. But I just want to drive that home that there's no proof, that nobody provides evidence, nobody provides anything to show that that their method is viable. Because there's a lot of people out here that are in jail and in prisons right now who have all their Moorish science paperwork in order. But you will hear a Moor tell them, oh no, he did something wrong. Then you'll hear another one come out and tell you that all you got to do is stand on it. Meaning you shouldn't have no whole bunch of paperwork, just stand on it. Like that shit is easy to say. All those things are easy to say. But in my opinion, the easiest thing in the world, one of the easiest things in the world would be for you to simply provide evidence that your method works and none of you do.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
There you go. Because at this point, all you guys are just lip service. You're what the courts call hearsay. We hear you saying a lot of things. That's the point of hearsay. I hear you saying it, but I don't see you providing any evidence to prove anything. Everyone walks around and says that Moor is basically synonymous with indigenous. If you claim to be indigenous, you're basically claiming to be a Moor. If you're claiming to be a Moor, you're basically claiming that you're indigenous to the Americas and blah, 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 blah. And so no one is providing evidence that any original tribe of this fucking land called themselves a Moor. Nowhere on the wall, nobody scratched in M-O-O-R.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
And that's the thing, bro. It's so many fucking people locked up behind that shit, but every time you talk about it, they never want to have that conversation. They never want to have a conversation about all these train wrecks, is what they're called. When you go to court and you fight against the court and it goes horribly wrong, and that lingo is called a train wreck. And they don't want to talk about all these fucking train wrecks. But you will hear everyone you talk to, every Moor you talk to, tell you without any room for doubt that all you have to do is this, all you have to do is that, and all you have to do is this, and you'll be fine. And I'm here to tell you, as a person who lived and breathed this shit, who actually went to court, stood in there, okay, stood in court and used this shit, and then had to reverse my stance to win my case, because what won my case was me challenging the facts and evidence that they had to apply anything to me in the first place. That's how I stumped them. Every other time, I had to realize when you use this Moorish shit in court, you are taking a position. When you take a position in court, that is called, what you're actually doing is taking what is called a burden of proof on yourself, because you're going to have to prove the shit that you say. So that's why I'm doing it here tonight on this live stream. The conversation started in Tasha Pope's channel. Go subscribe if you haven't already done so. But it started on her page in the comment section near the end of her live stream. And so I decided that we were not going to let this go tonight. We'll go ahead and pick this up. And we found out through a couple of people through the chat that the Moors, according to certain indigenous acts, that the Moors are not actually what they are, not a nation, or not listed as a nation. Now, are there Moors who out here who are aware or slightly aware that they are not listed as a nation, but rather a religious group? Are there any Moors out here who can say anything to the contrary of that? Because as it speaks right now, or as it sits right now, and I'll go verify this, like I said, as soon as I get off. But as it sits right now under the United States Indigenous Protection Act of 2012, it says that the Moors are not what they say they are, that they are just no different than a goddamn church somewhere. So the United Nations Indigenous Protection Act is what I'm asking the Moors to challenge right now. You can leave a comment on my comment section. You could message me if you were part of the group, leave it in the group. But I do want that question answered. We have another question. What about national citizenship? I think citizenship under any circumstances that have to do with the United States government is more than likely some sort of slavery. Okay, Onyx Pong. I said earlier, I seen the treaty. I have a copy of the treaty. Now, the copy I have of the treaty is a copy, meaning a brother had it, and when I was fighting, I was in jail fighting my case. A brother came through and he had it, and I sat down. It took me about 2 hours, and I copied that entire treaty word for word. So I have it. It's in, like I said, it's over here on my shelf somewhere, in one of those folders in my papers. But Black Conscious is under the impression that the treaty is expired. And I'm kind of inclined to agree with her to a certain extent, because I don't know if you guys have noticed this or are aware of this, or heard of it before, the Sundry Free More Act. I think it's 2000 something, whatever. It's in my desktop. I got it in my files. The Sundry Free More Act was an act that Moors brought, and I think they said like a couple of representatives backed it or whatever. Most notably, some white lady who was a representative, I think in Minnesota or somewhere up north. Okay? Again, these are just stories that I hear. If this thing is true, why are the Moors not plastering this shit all over the place? That's why I'm like, yo, if there's a treaty, yo, come on out. I don't see no Moors on their page demanding that the United States government adhere to the treaties and blah, 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 blah. Because I don't think these people give a fuck about their treaties. I don't even think the people who actually achieved diplomatic status have diplomatic status, because I'd like to see them record themselves. I'd like to see them record themselves going around and being a diplomat. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying it in a sense of mocking you or mockery. I just want to see you go around and do this shit and show the people the power you have in claiming your history. Because I claim it because it's my history. I claim being an Indigenous because, yo, like I said, I knew my great-grandmother, and she talked about her father and her tribe and her family, and wasn't no goddamn stories about Africa in there. Okay? There wasn't no African fucking stories nowhere in there, yo. So I'm not going to be one of these people just latching on to Africa just to latch on to Africa. And I'm damn sure not going to be one of these people who continue to listen to what white people say and their versions of history and their versions of any fucking thing, because you already been a proven lie. But that's what we want to know. We want to know, is there any Moors out here who have actual video footage and or evidence of them applying their methods in court to free their people, to show that these courts have no jurisdiction? Also, we'd like to know, are there any Moors out here who feel that Moorish or Moor is synonymous with Indigenous, and the facts and evidence they have to prove that? And I'd also like to know, we also like to know, how come we don't have any Moorish law firms? Meaning, I should be able, if I'm a Moor and you're a Moor and I don't want to talk in court, I should be able to go to my Moorish brother, since we run this shit, and have him handle the shit. So these are all questions that I have. These are all things that have never been discussed. These treaty talk about someone respecting the treaty. I respect the treaty, but I don't think that these Europeans respect it, because it would mean that they would have to move aside and let you handle everything. And though there may be some of them who know the truth and are willing to do that because they feel they'll be saved for doing so, but other than that, I don't see that shit. The average beat cop on the street, don't know shit about no fucking Moorish science, don't know a damn thing about no treaty. And if he didn't know about it or was aware of it, would pay it no mind because his superiors never told him one time not to do something based upon the treaty. And that's essential to the treaty. That's essential to the treaty. It's essential to the treaty that people, first off, know about the fucking treaty. So how could you have a treaty and nobody fucking know about the goddamn treaty? How can you have a treaty that no one knows about, but you expect people to respect it, and then actually go around and tell people that these people do know about the treaty, they just pretending not to know? What people? Are you talking about judges? Are you talking about politicians? Are you talking about regular street cops? Are you talking about prosecutors? And what evidence do you have that these people are aware of some treaty from 17, whatever the fuck? Come on, G. This is too much for me. This is too much for me. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I just want to throw this out here because we were still talking about it. I appreciate you, Black Conscious, Brooklyn. What does that say? Leonard Deyuda, 072. Onyx Palms. I'm not used to some of you guys seem new, and I'm still glad you're here. Glad you stopped through. Barzilla 187. Going through just to see who stopped through, guys. 504 Nola. 504 Nola. Who else? Tasha Pope, you was in here kicking it with me, chilling. And everybody who came through the comment. The next video that I'm gonna do, when we talk about this, probably tomorrow, we're gonna actually have a fucking what you call it, the call-in. I'll have my line open so that you guys can call in and we'll talk about it. And hopefully Root could be a part of it the next time. So it's late. You guys go to bed. Shame TV East Watch. Talking more talk here.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
I don't think that my ancestors on this hemisphere was all calling themselves Moors. So if anybody has proof, evidence to the contrary, hit it in the comment section and we'll go at it again. Peace.
Shame. Shame. Shame.